Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Dog's Mouth. This time we have Mr. Bill Buckley from the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and former Mississippi State wide receiver. And where is that sound coming from? Kendrick Vivians again. So since this is not my interview, this is Jeremiah's interview, I am going to hand the reins over to him since he knows this gentleman personally.
All right, so we just kind of jump into it because I know Mr. Buckley, I know you're busy, so just kind of give everybody an introduction. As AJ said, he is Bill Buckley. He played at Mississippi State. He's in the Hall of Fame for Mississippi State. He's considered one of the best receivers to ever come through Mississippi State, right up there with Eric Mose, and I guess some will say Chad Bumpus and maybe a De'Ronian Wilson. So he's in that pantheon. Mr. Bill, just welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been missing you.
Miss you too. And guys, I'm gonna call him Mr. Bill because that's what I call him. I don't call him Mr. Buckley. We all call him Mr. Bill, those that know him. So, Mr. Bill, we'll start off with the question that we ask all our guests on From the Dog's Mouth. What led you to Mississippi State? Why did you become a Dawg?
Well, I grew up in Starkville. My dad worked at Mississippi State. I lived there from the time I was 5 years old and all the way to a senior in high school. And I was recruited by some other teams and traveled to their campuses, but it just always seemed like I was destined to be a Bulldog, and I loved Mississippi State from the time I could ring a cowbell. So it was like staying at home, really, is what it was.
So even though passing wasn't as big a deal back in the 70s, were you a little nervous about going to Mississippi State, as seemingly it hadn't changed up to this day, as Mississippi State has always been a running school? Even though passing wasn't, the thing back then, it was more still running the football. Were you a little nervous being a receiver and you want to catch the football?
Yeah, I was. Just anytime you go from high school to college, that's a big change. I appreciate you saying that, Jeremiah. Those guys today, they have about 20 different pass routes. We had about seven.
A standard route.
It just really, you had to be creative. You had to get in space. You had to make a play. It was a little bit more of a challenge then. We were a pro set drop back quarterback. We had a fullback and a tailback in an I formation, and we had a great running back, so we had a good running game. Wayne Jones was a great running back there at the same time I was there. But we threw the ball some too and aired it out, had some guys that could throw it. So it was fun.
And to the fans that might not understand what a pro set is, and because people spread it out and go four wide every, play now. But pro set, you did, as Mr. Bill said, you have a fullback, you have a tight end, maybe have two receivers. So it was a pretty standard offense that people used back then. But nowadays, you see the quarterback, not behind center anymore in the shotgun. So for those who might not understand what that is, that's what the pro set is. So, Mr. Bill, just talk about just your time at Mississippi State. Obviously, you had to sit the first year, as we discussed before, about why Chad Bumpus might have broke a few of your records that freshmen couldn't play back in at that time. So talk about just your evolution. Your second year, you kind of came on a little bit as a sophomore. Then your junior year, you kind of broke out. So talk about kind of like that evolution over those couple of years.
Oh, yeah, that was that was an interesting time. Like you said, we had a freshman team. We had a freshman season, which I think is awesome. I almost wish they still did that because it gave us freshmen, everybody had an opportunity to play. We were making the transition, and it was just great to have our own team and have our own schedule. We played 6 games, and it gave us experience. It built camaraderie. I thought it was a great introduction to college football. I wish they still had that. After that, I came into to a setting where we had some really good receivers, and I started the last half of my sophomore year. But like you said, I think I didn't really have a breakout season until my junior year.
Talk about that breakout season. You end up leading. Not only did you break out, but you led the SEC in receiving. I don't know if a Mississippi State player has done that since then. I'm guessing Eric Mose probably was somewhere in that range. So talk about being, I guess, in some people, probably the best receiver in the SEC at that time.
Well, what I've learned, football, sports is really, it's almost like, you work hard, but your year's got to come to you too. A lot of things have to fall into place. You have to stay healthy. You have to be in the right offense. You have to have a quarterback that is, matches you. There's so many things that happen. And I think my sophomore year, not being that great or nobody knew my name or anything, I think I hadn't done anything. So what do you have to lose? And so I feel like I was really able to give myself, and that's how I try to coach athletes. Don't think about what you did or what you didn't do. Man, have a clean slate, man, and just go for it. And I think that was my junior year. I didn't have anything to prove or lose, and I just had fun and played ball.
So I guess I'm kind of sticking with kind of like the same theme as far as like how you became such a great player, but talk about that. And I know I read in one of your books, or your book a couple of years ago, you said there was 4 for 1 and somebody's missed a meal, but it didn't seem like you missed a meal, but you didn't exactly grow up with money. So talk about that difference as being a college football player, being someone that probably didn't grow up with all the advantages.
Yeah, we were not poor in the sense of so many people. I grew up in a farm family with 4 brothers, and I wore my older brother's clothes all the way through high school until I could afford my own, his hand-me-down clothes. And, it wasn't extreme, but we certainly didn't know wealth. And I think it was to my advantage. We were tough farm boys. We learned how to work. We learned how to sweat. Every summer I was working my butt off in the hay fields or somewhere, and on the farm. By the time I got to 2-a-day football, it was a break. I mean, it wasn't a hard thing for me, and I think that gave me an advantage. And I think it gives a lot of kids advantage today that grow up in a pretty tough environment.
So do you think the game has kind of changed a little bit now? Because even though some guys, say like LeBron James in basketball, it seems like when guys show a little bit of an ability level, even as early as Pop Warner, they start there early. It's kind of like people kind of put a cocoon around them. So even though they might not have the advantages, in a sense, they start getting the advantages because because they're great players. So do you think that's kind of changed the way, the way football is done now? Just the way that process is done now?
Oh, yeah. I think you have so many more people that are looking for talent. Nobody knew who I was on the college level until my senior year. Nobody, they just they find talent sooner. And I also think this too, I hear about all the records being broken today and everything. What they have as far as training today is 50 times better than what we have. Their diet, Mississippi State now has a dietitian. They had 5 strength coaches. They had they just had all kinds of they have 1,000 ways to make a player bigger, stronger, and faster. And it's just it's great. I love it. I'm not complaining about it, but we didn't have that. And I think you had to have a lot more natural stuff back then. But I think today you can take a guy that wants to run, that wants to play, that wants to work, and he can get to that next level.
Mm-hmm. So talk about that senior year, and then ultimately, I guess you end up being drafted. So talk about building off that junior year and trying to keep that same level of, I won't say expectation level, but kind of being able to reproduce that a stellar season in your senior year, just as you did in your junior year.
Yeah. I think that was a challenge for me to go into my senior year. There were some things that were happening in my life personally that were hurting my game. I quit getting better. And it wasn't because I had success. I think it was because of my identity was number 24. I had no idea who I was off the field. And I believe that because I lacked that understanding, I had a really hard time getting better, growing, getting stronger. By the time I was a senior, I was burned out. because I've been trying to carry this image of Bill Buckley, number 24. And I got tired, man. I just got tired. And so I started doing some things. I started using some drugs and not taking care of my body. And my senior year was not as good because of my own personal choices.
So talk about how that hurt you. I guess obviously something like that's going to hurt you when you I mean, considering what you were able to do in college on a non-passing offense, going to the NFL, it seems like it should have set you up for at least a pretty good run in the NFL. So do you think those issues kind of prevented you from having a longer NFL career?
Oh, there's no question about that. I was lost. I was lost in a lot of ways, and I didn't have anybody really. You know, when I lost eligibility, I didn't have anybody in my corner anymore. And that I had my wife. I was married by then. She was wonderful, but I didn't have a coach or anybody in my corner. I didn't have anybody saying, hey, what's going on? And I don't blame that on anybody else. I didn't want to be around them. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so I didn't have a good work ethic going into that summer of the draft. And I think those scouts, they knew what they were seeing. They were looking at somebody who was going down instead of up.
So I guess kind of piggybacking off that a little bit, I know recently, sadly, the past couple months or this half of the year when we have COVID-19 and everything else that's happened in 2020, but two Mississippi State players, De'Rania Wilson and P.J. Jones, they both, passed away. And it seems like both of them kind of struggled with that similar transition. And do you think maybe some of it was a bit of that identity thing? Because, I mean, De'Rania Wilson was probably similar to you, one of the better receivers to come through Mississippi State, and then obviously seemed like he might have had some challenges after the fact. What do you think that is where guys just have that trouble like transitioning where they're not number 24 or number 1 anymore?
Man, that is a powerful question, Jeremiah. I have been studying that. I've been writing some things. I've been trying to put together some resources and the title that I gave it was Life After Football. And I really believe this with all my heart, that football players suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. Now, I know it may not be on the level of a combat guy who was fighting in the Middle East. It may not be on that level, but I believe when you look at the characteristics of some of these guys when they come out of that, see, I think the general public doesn't understand the intensity of that. Those guys don't have a life. The only time they have off is about 2.5, 3 months in May. Every other day is something to do with football. And it's intense and it's hard and it's challenging. And please don't tell me, well, they get a free education. Well, let's figure that out by the hour. Those guys work their butts off. And you come out into a war every Saturday afternoon. And you can't just stop that cycle and tell a kid to just go and do something else. And, some make it, but many of them don't. And I know that they're accountable for their own lives, but I believe they need some help. I believe those guys coming out need some help with life after football.
And I know Mississippi State kind of set some up to kind of like maybe help those guys with transition after, because, even I was saying at the time, it probably wasn't the best look for the university, even though it's not their fault at all. They're accountable for their actions. But to say two players who were pretty good and just that short after their career, they kind of died in some very just, I guess, weird circumstances for both of them. But before I kind of get into your time of transitioning out of, I guess, your playing career, I want to see if any other guys had anything to ask about your career or anything like that before we kind of sped ahead. Yes. Everybody else is good. So
the question that I had is probably going to come up later, and the fact that he went through so much at the end of his career, and probably that leading to the, the position that he's in today. So that's probably going to get resolved in the natural flow of the conversation.
Okay. So let's kind of move ahead. So Mr. Bill, I guess you ended up deciding not to play anymore, and talk about just the time, coming to Christ, and then your relationship with the FCA, how that kind of started.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was like I said, I got drafted, and I went up to the Jets. I wasn't in shape. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't have a plan. And then I got there and made it through the exhibition season, and I was actually the last player to get cut that year. It was really kind of ironic. I was the last guy to get cut. And so I left there, and, I was so burned out, Jeremiah. I wouldn't let myself feel any of that. I just came back home and got into drugs even deeper. And I was a messed up, broken dude. And I got a job hanging sheetrock. I went from the NFL to hanging sheetrock overnight. And I look back now and I see not that it was his plan at all, but that he exploited all of that, taking me into my own personal desert and wilderness so I could get my life back again.
So talk about just some of those stops during, I think you ended up, you coached a little bit during that time working with the FCA. I give you a moment to get that.
Yeah, well, the rest of that story is after about 3 years of going nowhere, after I'd come back home, I gave my life to Christ. I'd gone to church my whole life, but I didn't even know what it meant to have a relationship with God. I just was a religious churchgoer. And but in that year, after a couple of years after I got back and going nowhere and being nobody, I just cried out to God and asked him to help me. I had no idea how to pray or do any of that, but I started doing everything I could to pursue him. I did, and I began to grow in my relationship with him. He got me connected to other people that loved him. And there were several families that came around marrying me and helped us to grow up. And, that's what everybody needs. These kids coming out of school, they don't need money. They need people. They need relationships with people that can love them and teach them and go with them and get in their lives with them. And God sent us those kinds of people, and they were Christians. And so we began to make changes in our lives and grow. And not too long after that, I was in the trade fields for about 7 years, God just cleaning my life up. And then not too long after that, I became a coach at one single A school. Actually, I was athletic director, and they were hiring me because there wasn't anybody else. And that's where I began my coaching career, and coached 3 sports there, and coached for a total of about 15 years, part of the time in New York and part of the time down here. So that's how I kind of got into to coaching in FCA.
So I guess all of that kind of led you back to Mississippi State eventually. And one of the things I guess people don't know is that, well, some fans might know, but as far as like when you came to Mississippi State, Mullen had a bit of obviously as the FCA director, you're going to have a pretty strong relationship with the football head coach. Because normally football is going to be the premier sport on each campus. So, but yeah. Mullen had a bit of a reputation for being a little, let's just say, raw. So
that's an understatement.
So you told me before, but talk about kind of like that approach to coming in and initially, I won't say addressing Mullen, but building that initial relationship with him.
Yeah, we try to train our FCA staff to walk into a coach's office and shut up. We don't, if you walk in there with some kind of agenda, they're going to smell it right away, because everybody has an agenda with a head coach. Mm-hmm. So we really try to train our staff to go in, be quiet and listen, figure out who that guy is, what his heart is, what his values are, and then ask him if you can join him in what he's doing. And I think that's why Dan Mullen accepted me, because I didn't have this big plan. I went in and I asked him, I said, what are your values? And if anybody that knows him knows his number one value is relentless work. That was everywhere. It was on our T-shirts. It was on the lockers. It was everywhere. Relentless work. And so what I would do is I would play off that, and I would say, Coach, can we start this? And I would suggest some things, and he said, well, we'll give it a shot. And but I would always play off of what he was doing. And I got to say this about Dan Mullen. I think he was one of the best coaches anywhere. He's not very popular in Mississippi right now, but he's a great coach. And but he is a tremendous coach, and he's a friend of mine. And I feel like we built a good relationship because I honored him, and I think that's important.
I wasn't even gonna bring this up, but I thought about your first year when you came along. Obviously, Mississippi State had a bit of a turnaround that year. They had a pretty good year, but obviously one of the tragedies that happened during that season was Nick Bell passed away kind of unexpectedly. And I remember I still was in Starkville at that time, and it kind of was very unexpected at that time. So talk about trying to steer a team through something like that. It's very rare that you're going to lose a teammate throughout the season, especially throughout the season in such a kind of like a sudden way, the way it happened with him.
I want to tell you, Jeremiah, that was a shock. I mean, it shocked that team. When you have a big, strong guy like Nick, and all of a sudden he's lying there in a casket, that really shocked that team. I mean, that was really hard, and it shocked the coaches. I mean, everybody. It was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced in sports ministry. I think eventually it galvanized us and brought us together, but it was a really, really difficult time. I was so grateful for all of our coaches who really, really made room for Nick's family. Took the whole team over to the funeral, and really loved on that family in some beautiful ways.
So kind of talk about, the next two seasons, it seems like the team kind of went through a bit of I won't say a malaise, but it seems like the next couple of seasons, they were good making bowl games, but then it just seems like they couldn't duplicate that success from the 2010 season. But, we led up to the 2014 season, but even that year before, it seemed like the talent was there. And I think maybe you even told me at the time that the leadership wasn't there. So what do you think was the important shift from 2013 to 14 that enabled the team to be able to win?
Man, that's a great question. I'm not a football analyst. All I know is what I saw. Every year, so many things have to happen and come together. People have to stay healthy. You have to have the right depth at the right position. You got to get breaks. I think that year things kind of began to go our way because, first of all, I think Coach Mullen's core values were paying off. You couldn't stay around there if you weren't a hard worker, and I felt like we had a bunch of hard workers, blue collar guys that bought into the system, and I think that was a big factor.
So I guess with that team, obviously everybody knows who was considered the best player on that team in 2014 was Dak Prescott. So, all the superlatives about Dak have already been said, and he's just got a little bit of money from the Cowboys. But what is it? And you got a chance to see his whole, I guess not only overuse the word evolution, but you got to see him grow throughout those years. Was there a moment where you knew that, he was a special kind of player that was going to do big things at Mississippi State, considering you got to see it every step of the way?
Oh, man. I just remember seeing him as a freshman and thinking the thing that always impressed me about him was he always had a positive can-do attitude. And when he was a freshman, you could see that positive can-do. And that stood out to me right away. It wasn't like his athletic ability or his reading ability, able to read coverages or anything. He just always had that attitude, and he made everybody around him better. And I think many of us saw that early, and that's something I think that really carried him through and helped him to really be a coach in that huddle. They trusted him, and he cared about everybody. and he had that attitude all the way through.
Yeah, I had to say I agree with that. I still remember the first time I saw him, and I remember telling him, I guess somebody that served under Cortez McCraney at the time. I was like, man, it's something different about that dude. It's just I never saw him play football. I just was like, he just got a different something. It was like I don't know, and I know I've read that Coach Bayless was the one that told Mullen to take him as a quarterback because he kind of similar to what you're talking about. He saw the way he worked out. Mind you, he's a quarterback. You wouldn't think they cared about that, but it was something about the attitude he had. Because that was the guy that was recruited to be a tight end. That seems ironic now. But.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does.
He got recruited to be a tight end by all those schools, and then
that's crazy. He was a relentless worker. Always, you can tell the true team leader. He always takes care of the team, and Dak was always taking care of the team, always taking care of his teammates.
All right, so I guess I was just thinking about as you were saying, as far as like, I mean, you're in a unique position as someone that's the FCA chaplain, and a lot of them sometimes did play sports, but like you were a coach, and then you were considered a great player, or not considered, was a great player. So did the coaches ever come to you and just ask your opinion of someone? Because I mean, obviously, anybody knows the game of football. It isn't all about your talent; it's about the other stuff. So did the coaches ever come to you and consult about a guy's mentality, like if they had what it took, so to speak?
No, not so much like that. I was asked by most every coach that I've ever been a chaplain for. I have been asked to help with kids who are struggling, who might have the talent, but the coaches can't find the key. And a lot of times I've been asked to come in and connect with that player, and talk with that player, spend time with that player. So, I've done some of that, I'll tell you another thing that I did. Dan didn't take advice too well. He pretty much.
That really shocks me. That shocks me.
but one time after a game, we got beat by somebody. I think it was Alabama, and after on Monday morning, I waited till Monday morning. I went into his office and I said, Dan, you're one of the best I've ever seen, but sometimes you take yourself out of the game. And I described a situation about that I saw that happen in that game. And he looked at me as serious as a heart attack. And he said, Bill, don't let me do that. It's like all of a sudden he's putting the burden on me to not let him get out of the game. And so from that point on, if I saw that happening, I just kind of ease up to him and just kind of say, come on, coach, let's go. I just kind of pull on the shirt tail. And that's all it was. Nobody even knew what I was doing, but it was just a little bit of a reminder to get him back in the game. So, that's not a normal chaplain thing. But I was, it was, I think all great coaches have a weakness, and if they can bring someone in to help them be strong in it or overcome it, that's a good thing.
So, that was funny because a lot of time when I would watch the game, that's normally why I would see you. You normally be kind of right there around Coach Mullen, I guess, when they be showing him on the sidelines or something like that.
Jeremiah, you know what people said? Here's what they said. They said, you just want to get on TV. And, I couldn't tell them I had an assignment, but anyway, sure that's all right. That's okay.
Now, I will say that Mullen seems like he stopped spazzing out on the sidelines as the years went on, so maybe you did have an impact.
Yeah, well,
I know in the early years it would be pretty much acute that Mullen at least once a game was you're going to see him explode on the sidelines.
Yeah. Well, he was like all of us. He was maturing and getting better. And I'll tell you what, those kids of his, they changed his heart too. Having that little girl, I think that tenderized his heart some.
I think that does it to everybody. That's the thing with it. Even becoming a teacher myself, it seems I go from the hardcore sports journalist to now it's like, I was like, hey, maybe she say it like that. You think about those things now.
That's right.
Kind of like fast forwarding a little bit. Obviously, you ended up kind of, I guess they ended up asking you to be the FCA director overall for the whole state. So you're over Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and just the state in general. So was that a hard kind of accepting the role like that? I mean, you kind of being able to be, I guess, of course, serve God, but at the same time, I guess, help a football team grow. So how was that kind of going from that transition of kind of being on campus and being in the mix, so you kind of now you're overseeing everybody?
Well, honestly, it's been a challenge. I'm just finishing my 3rd year as state director, and I accepted this role because I felt like it was an assignment that I needed to take, that I was going to be a bridge from the past to the future. But I'm going to tell you, Jeremiah, I missed the sideline. I missed the locker room. I missed the coach's office, the team meetings. That's why I came to FCA. That's why I became a part of it. That's where my heart is. So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be getting back to that sideline before too long. But I really do miss it. But I really have enjoyed leading our FCA staff. We have 50 staff, male, female, black, white. They are the best team I've ever been around. They're amazing.
Well, and kind of speaking to that, I remember some years ago when we talked, I think you said when you first came on the FCA that was one of your challenges, trying to kind of like diversify the staff a little bit. And we're going to kind of get to some of the current things. Do you think that's important? I mean, that you ended up doing that, considering what the state is going to be dealing with, really, I guess, for the next couple of years, because that's now that the race has become a huge conversation in the state.
Oh, yeah. There's no question about it. We have diversified, but we need to go further. We really do. And I don't think it's maybe you can help me with this. Maybe some of your listeners can help me. We're finding it hard to identify people of color to come and be with us. White people, we have a lot of them. Man, they'll come when we don't even have a position. But finding African American brothers and sisters that have the gift set to do FCA, it's just we don't have a lot of them coming and knocking on the door. We've got to figure out a way to find them better.
Well, and I think one thing is, I mean, I even went on mission trips and things like that. I think it's kind of twofold. One is obviously, race support is a big deal, but at the same time, I don't know, just coming from, I guess, my community has always been tough, and just seeing in the role as a teacher now, you kind of see kids haven't always seen positive white role models, males. I think it's particularly males, and going to serve under someone that's kind of hard, especially a white male, because that trust factor isn't there. Because some guys even have that, and I even joked on Facebook about, my football team in high school. My high school, we were almost like stuck in the 60s because our name was the Confederates. We had a black and white homecoming queen, and then our white head coach wouldn't start the black quarterback. So it was kind of like, I think a lot of, so it's kind of, we came from, a lot of people come from those type of situations. And I don't know, maybe some of the other guys can kind of chime in and maybe get their thoughts on why they feel, maybe why, and maybe not speaking to overall the Christian experience, but maybe like why some African Americans may not trust being part of that system.
Let me tell you something, brother. I can't relate to this at all because I went to an all-black high school. But I will say this, that as far as trusting the system and stuff like that, and Ricardo will probably be able to speak to this more than I will, put on your swim trunks because we're about to go into the deep end of the pool. Nowadays, the Christianity is the white man's religion thing is like really starting to ramp up. And as far as being able to find qualified Christian, African Americans, I'm pretty sure that they're out there, but it's kind of like I was talking about with Coach Cohen, is more about making a conscious effort to identify those people, because I'm pretty sure that those people are out there, but like you said, it might not be so self-evident. Like, I guess that might not be the thing that's going on in the streets. So it's going to have to be one of those intentional type of deals. Like in education, we talk about success is not accidental, it's intentional. So I think that just going out there and finding the best guys that you possibly can.
All right, Ricardo, you have anything to add to that?
That's good.
I can say I can agree with piggyback off of Arthur's point. That's, and especially in this day and society as time has passed. Because I'm from Mississippi too. I grew up down in Salis around Kosciuszko, not too far from Starkville, and I was raised pretty much in the church, mostly Baptist. And when it comes to that, what Arthur touched on, that I believe that that's pretty much the stigma of that when it comes to this generation. Not only with people our age, but the younger generation, because we had more, I guess, more say structure coming up more than the children have now, because you have a lot more children now growing up in single parent households, especially when it comes to African American, brown people, Hispanics, of that nature. I pretty much I want to speak for all of them. So I think that's not having that role model in that aspect, because especially with everything that's going on, a lot of people that look like us tend to look at our white counterparts as the enemy, when in actuality all are not, and I think a lot of, when it comes to the younger generation, I think that they need to see someone that, hey, basically not only just at home, but when it comes to that aspect in religion, that, hey, you have someone here that has your back, and, so I'm here for you. But because a lot of people, especially when it comes to inner city children and children of that grew up in impoverished conditions, they don't have those people to come tell them that, hey, this is okay, we got your back, and you get to have a proverbial shoulder to lean on.
And I appreciate your thoughts, Ricardo. That was very, wow. And kind of just piggybacking a little bit off of what Ricardo was saying. I know his uncle actually was my teacher in 7th grade, ironically. But as a teacher, now I remember my first year, I taught at a predominantly, I wouldn't consider it inner city, but it was an urban school. And most of the kids were Black and Hispanic. And I remember having a conversation with one of the white male teachers, and I told him, of course it's important for those kids to see me being a role model, things like that, and it actually affects them going to college because the stats say that. But I say it's important for them to see you too, because they need to see that there's a white male that they can trust. And I think that kind of lends to more of that, in a sense, that is systemic, because it leads to a situation like you're talking about, where people aren't as quick to, I guess, I want to use the word submit, but come and be led by you, Mr. Bill.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, so Jeremiah, can you hear me, Jeremiah? I
Yes.
can't hear nothing. Okay, but I was thinking about, as far as, religion, and then that filtering up into what he does, and being able to find Black people who are, have that skill set. I was thinking about that in class when we talk about history and things like that. I grew up in church, so I use a lot of biblical references, and I find that a lot of my students didn't come up in church. Like, when I was younger, it seemed like most people, they might not have went to church every Sunday, but they went to church in some way, shape, or form. They had some type of familiarity with Christianity. And I feel as though that's kind of lacking nowadays, because I make a biblical reference and they be like, I have no idea what that's about. And as a matter of fact, as we have technology, if you go into a church nowadays, the last few times I went into a church, the kids weren't actually listening to the gospel. They were on their phones playing Candy Crush and stuff like that. So I feel as though that it could possibly be, a generational thing, on top of it being racial also. So I don't know what they're going to do about it. I'm just putting it out there.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I want to say too, if I may, Jeremiah, FCA staff people, we have to raise our own money. Every staff person that comes in, they figure out what their budget is going to be, what their salary is going to be, their traveling expenses and everything. They put it in one big budget, and then each of us has to raise that money ourselves. So what we've discovered is that in the African American community, that's sometimes a lot more difficult. And y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this is right, but just from our limited perspective, it seems like that African Americans, they'll give to their church, but to another organization that's maybe not black, they may not be given to FCA, you know,
Yeah.
and that's been a challenge. So I'm not sure what we need to do about that. Maybe we need to start raising money to make it happen for African American brothers and sisters.
I think speaking to that, it's kind of threefold. First is the level of like awareness. Like I think a lot of people and it's something I didn't even realize until, you know, I've had to raise support for different ministry trips, but you know, having friends who have had to raise support, there's three things going on. First, there isn't a lot of awareness in the African American community that is an issue. They don't know. Then two, I've heard from some African Americans that, and they say sometimes people of other colors, sometimes they don't give as quickly to you. I think that's kind of one of the problems as well. And then I think a third thing is kind of the African Americans that you may be able to get to support you if you're given to an organization that's primarily ran by people that are white. They don't trust that system. Like, so they're not going to be as quick, I think, to give money to a system that's led by white people, because there is a lot of mistrust in the African American community. Is everything going on in the world now as far as with white organizations, because it's just a mistrust there. So I think it's three different things going on. So I don't think it's a problem that's easily solved in that way. But I think awareness is important too, because I personally did not even know it was that hard for African Americans to raise support. So I won't say if there's a moment, it's probably now to raise that awareness, because I'm not just about, you know, I've told people about, you know, the flag is the issue, which I guess we'll get to, and then some of these other things going on. But there's some other things within the African American community, even I felt like maybe we could do ourselves and raising awareness to these other things that are going on like this, that's part of it. Obviously, Christianity in America, that controls a lot. I mean, our whole legal system is built around the Christian system. I mean, how thou shalt not kill, blah, 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 blah. So everything, the whole legal system is built around it. So it is vitally important. So I think I'm glad that you posed that. It is something that I've heard is an issue, but, you know, I think people are so focused on the big stuff, but they don't focus on the little things that is affecting these things.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
Yeah, so I guess let's move on. I guess move to the muckety-muck. I guess some of the things that are going on. In your unique position of being over Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and just over the whole state, what kind of response? Is it kind of hard in that situation to give sometimes, not an authentic answer, but it is tough. And essentially, you have to raise support. Your organization has to raise support that a lot of your constituents, just being frank, are older white males probably. And then you have Black Lives Matter. Is it kind of hard to, you know, I won't say make a bold statement, but are you kind of in a tough position when it comes to making statements or saying how you feel about that and that's the other side of it, people don't look at it. Is it kind of hard to make a bold statement when you know that, you know, a lot of your constituents might hold some of those feelings?
Well, it might be for somebody, but it hadn't been for me.
Mm-hmm.
Go look at my Facebook posts. I have made some very bold statements. I have not been silent. If you go to our Mississippi FCA webpage and look at the statement that I made on there, and we have not been silent. Dr. Martin Luther King, I'll never forget him talking about how bad silence is, and that we've got to find our voices in times of injustice. And I have found my voice. And I want you to know that, Jeremiah. I have found my voice and I have spoken out. This is no time for us to be silent. And you know, we may lose some support, but we've got to have a voice. And you know, I want to say having a voice and having one voice are not the same thing. We don't always have to have the same voice. But we always have to listen. And I think we always have to keep having the dialogue. The most important thing I've done in the last 6 months is to shut up and listen to some of my African-American friends, listening to them, listening to their hearts and what they what they're going through, what they see. That has been so important to me.
So, and I guess I kind of lead to, I guess, kind of like as we kind of go to the tail end of the interview. Obviously, it's an important moment right now in the state. Literally today, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, everyone's coming in unison to kind of, I guess, I won't say stand against the flag and things like that. So, I guess I'm trying to word this question correctly. With the flag kind of being a divisive issue, do you think it's an important show of unity that both Mississippi State and Ole Miss are essentially marching against the flag and pushing the state to, I guess, vote it out?
I'm excited to see it. You know, can I just read you one paragraph of what I wrote about the flag? Can I
Absolutely.
read that?
Yeah, you definitely can do that.
I put this on Facebook. It was either today or yesterday. I said, I'm grateful for the Southern Baptists who, through their oversight body, the Southern Baptist Convention, announced this week that they support changing the Mississippi State flag, which currently incorporates the Confederate flag. I was against this until during the last year, I was able to speak privately with several African-American Mississippians. They didn't even talk about the flag, but rather about what they see as exceedingly slow progress in overcoming the division and inequality in our state. They all said we have come a long way, but they all said we have a long way to go. Why would we let a symbol of rebellion and brokenness keep us from strengthening those relationships today? Keeping the flag might make sense politically, but before the Lord, it makes no sense. And I quoted Romans 12:10 that says, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor.
And honestly, I think it's so important right now. And I never try to overtalk my religious views, but folks remember, I mean, what the word says as far as when it comes to these issues. And I think, like you said, it isn't, I think what I hear a lot of, I don't say white Christians, but white people say that are for the flag is this is our heritage, but okay, it's your heritage, I guess, but you got to think about the symbol of it and what it represents. And my co-host, Arthur, he said once about maybe last week that you got to think about what that symbol means to African Americans. Think about what, say, the Nazi symbol means to Jewish people. Do you think they want to see it on anything? And I know some say it's not the same, but how can you say that the Jews, it was a Holocaust, but African Americans, you were enslaved for 400 years and people were killed, raped, and different things. So why would you want to be reminded of that? So I think that's just I guess overall feeling of a lot of African Americans when it comes to that. Like, it is a symbol, and it's a symbol that maybe some people don't want to be reminded of.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add before we kind of wrap it up?
Well, I saw that you put on the script about FCA's role. So I guess that my question would be like, what does the Mississippi FCA kind of have in the pipes to kind of deal with these type of situations? I know that we're going to Kylan Hill next, but I just want to hear about some tangible things that you guys are looking at.
Yeah, we are, of course, the beauty of FCA is color never has mattered. You know, sports brings everybody together. You're on our team, you're on our team. It don't matter what color you are. So just the very fabric and the very foundation of Fellowship of Christian Athletes is rooted and grounded in the fact that we're all different. And so everything we do in every leadership position, I wish you could have been to our leadership camp, our summer leadership camp, where we had kids from all over Mississippi, and a bunch of them were African-American leaders on their campuses. And we were pouring into them, training them to be leaders to go back. And nobody saw black kids and white kids. We just saw kids who had a heart to change their campus. And I think the fact that we just, I believe FCA has a reputation in our state for being open to all people and honoring everybody and as teammates. And we have definitely had Zoom calls. We've had all staff meetings, and we've talked about this issue. that we've got to stand for justice. We've got to stand for reconciliation, and so we've been very clear about training our staff and talking to our staff, and very intentional about making sure that we don't have any kind of standard or practice that would be inclusive.
So I guess, I don't know if AJ wants to ask the question or I asked the question. Maybe like you muted.
Oh, okay. So Ricardo actually had something he wanted to say, I believe.
Ricardo, you muted.
No, I was just wanted to just speak on that thing with the flag. I'll wait till the Kylan Hill subject comes up.
Oh, okay. Also, before we go on to the next thing, I wanted to give a shout out to Tyson Cunningham, the chaplain for the men's basketball team. I got to do that on behalf of Fred because he said he seen him when he was a little pup, and now he, working with the FCA at Mississippi State, and I know that he's very proud of him. So big shout out to him. And he was there during them Rick Ray days, holding it down. So, all right. So, Kylan Hill. Kylan Hill, we know how Jeremiah feels about Kylan Hill, but I said that Kylan Hill is a bit of a drama queen. And then they were like, well, actually, he wasn't talking about that. He didn't say he wasn't going to play for Mississippi State. He just said that he wasn't going to represent the state of Mississippi, whatever that means. However, I personally feel as though that it was somewhat positive because of the fact that it got people to talking. It started a dialogue. And probably what Kylan Hill did is the reason why you have the university and teammates and people going down to the Capitol and stuff like that. To a certain degree, I feel as though that he put some pressure on them. He drew a bunch of negative attention towards the state of Mississippi and the flag. And I feel as though that it started a dialogue. So I guess that what we're trying to do is we're just getting your take on Kylan Hill's statement about how he was going to stop representing the state of Mississippi if they didn't get rid of the flag. From the perspective of FCA and the perspective of a former Mississippi State athlete.
Well, do you I have to relate everything to Jesus because that's who I am. Okay, I gotta just say this. I love when Jesus, some of his disciples, the Bible says they came and tried to make him king. And when they came and tried to make him king, he resisted. He left out of their sight. He said, no, you're not going to make me king. And in reality, he already was. And so I think Jesus showed us that it's not healthy to give your soul away to politics. I don't care who you are. Politics will never be healthy in the end for anybody. We use politics. They're part of our system. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm sure not going to sell my soul out to politics. I'm on this call because I love Jeremiah Short. And Kylan Hill, I don't know what's in his heart. He's an American. He can make his own choices. He's a big boy. I know this. I'm going to pray for him. I know this. If he picks the phone up, if he had my number, I'd talk to him and do everything I could to help him.
Okay. Jeremiah, you got it.
Well, I guess kind of closing up. One, I just want to thank you for coming on and just sharing your perspective just on everything, one, that's going on, but kind of telling. I think people need to understand probably how good you were as a player, even though I know you don't focus as much on that. I've even told, I used to see when I first met you, I was like, man, you still were in shape almost like somebody, like they still can go out there and run a 7 route, even though you only had 7 routes back then. So I just kind of want to just thank you for coming on. And like I said, just sharing your thoughts on everything that's going on. So I don't know if there's anything you kind of want to leave anybody with, obviously with everything going on. What are some maybe you can leave everybody up with, something they can think about as we close out?
Well, I just, I want to just encourage everybody. I just appreciate everybody on this call. And I appreciate you. I value your voice, all of you. And I'm grateful for you. I really am. Thank you. for doing what you're doing. I think this is a great thing that you're doing. I just want to say this, I think blacks and whites, both of us, I think we're both accountable. We're all accountable. And I think we need to be accountable. And of course, me being a Christian, I'm called to be accountable before the Lord. I can't just do and say what I want to. I have someone to honor. And I think whether you're a Christian or not, you have someone to honor. It might be your family, it might be your people. I don't know, but you got somebody to honor. And when we lose the truth of that we're just going to do what we want to do without honor, it's going to be a mess. But if we will learn to honor one another, that's powerful.
I don't know if there's any other way to really end the podcast. I think that statement pretty much settles it all. So I guess, AJ, maybe you can close us out.
All right. So I'm going to do the same thing that I always do. Normally, I would say, no. What I'm going to do this time is that I have to plug the Timmy Bowers interview. That is going to be Saturday at 7 p.m. It's going to be live, baby. Okay? It's going to be lit. You want to make sure that you're there. All right? So, Ricardo, what you got going on? You got your hand raised.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I would like to kind of, relate something to what Mr. Buckley said. I'm going to say this, and I feel like this is something that probably should be done compared to the subject that we talked about before this with the Kyler Hill situation. If I think the way he's going about it is good, so I'm going to stand behind him. As long as the intent is pure, which seems like it is, it doesn't seem, ill-willed or anything. But I think when it comes to something, especially when the guest that we have today, he seems pretty sincere about it. But I think when it comes to certain things, when it comes to the different ethnicity groups, I think something like that should be used in the aspect of bringing everybody together. Because in the beginning, if anyone knows the history, when it comes to religion, was used to divide two different races. Because one race used it to divide the other race and make them into thinking one thing is another and another and this is that. But I feel like during these days and times, especially when we have people, good people like we have on our guest today and other people, that I think it should be used as a I won't say a stepping stone, but used as something as good like as Mr. Buckley uses, especially when it comes to FCA, because I was a part of the high school in Cottage, because I went to Cottage School. That was a segregated high school 2020. And I feel like personally between our white counterparts and us as ethnicity. That's what I feel like should be done, and I feel like it can be done, and that's the only thing that I think that could happen to try to bring to widen the gap. But it's the only thing I feel like they can do instead of everything's going on, because when it comes to that flag never meant us any good from the beginning, even when Mississippi became a state in 1812 in December. So if the only way they can fix that is to do away with the flag, and like I spoke on the podcast every day, if anybody really, really want to make a difference, someone need to go holler at Tate Reeves and tell them about changing the name of that reservoir out there in the middle of the Tri-County area, down around Jackson, Hinds County, Rankin County, and Madison County. That'll be all.
Right. It's a good word. It's a good word. Thank you.
All right. Actually, I didn't think about that, Ricardo. I don't know how comfortable I feel with a reservoir named after a guy who shook Byron De La Beckwith's hand in the middle of his trial for shooting Medgar Evers. But, for now, I guess that we go focus on that flag situation.
One battle at a time.
Yeah. So like I say, Timmy Bowers, Saturday, 7 p.m. We live, baby. Okay. On Sunday, we gonna have the third year Black Dogs Matter extravaganza for the Facebook group and the 1 year of the podcast anniversary. I salute Mr. Bill Buckley for coming on to the show. Great having you on, and you know, we got to talk about our Christian faith and how that intersects with the issues that we got going on and Mississippi State athletics. So, heard Jeremiah say great things about you. Like I say, like your spirit. So, normally I would say praise the Lord and go Dogs, but remember that Vic Schaefer don't want any part of being around us anymore. So for now, I say, hey, bye.